Welcome to State of the Art. I'm your host and Storytime reader, Racheal Baier. Today, I'll be reading from my book, The Mirage of Love, a story about illusion, longing, and the quiet truths we discover when love isn't what it seems. Let's begin. Chapter 1, A Chance Encounter in a Sun-Drenched Souk. The cacophony of Marrakech assaulted Alana's senses in the most exhilarating way possible. Stepping out of the relative cool of her taxi and into the Jama El Fna square was like plunging headfirst into a living kaleidoscope. The air, heavy with the midday sun, was an intoxicating perfume of 1,000 ingredients, the earthy musk of cured leather mingling with the sharp sweetness of mint tea, the pungent allure of cumin and turmeric, and the delicate, almost ethereal scent of blooming jasmine wafting from unseen courtyards. It was a world away from the predictable, muted sense of London's smoggy, rain-washed streets. Here, every breath was an adventure. Sunlight, fierce and unfiltered, streamed through the intricately carved wooden lattices of the souks, casting dancing patterns of light and shadow on the packed earth and worn cobblestones. These narrow arteries of the old city pulsed with an energy that was both ancient and immediate. Stalls, crammed into every available nook and cranny, overflowed with treasures. Bolts of silk in jewel tones, sapphire, emerald, ruby shimmered like captured sunsets, spilling onto the pathways. Gleaming brass lanterns, their surfaces etched with mesmerizing geometric patterns, caught the light, promising to cast enchanted shadows in dimly lit rooms. Mountains of spices, piled high in conical mounds, painted the scene in vibrant hues of ochre, saffron, and crimson. Artisans hammered away at metal, the rhythmic clang a percussive soundtrack to the day, while storytellers, their voices rising and falling in melodic cadences, drew captivated crowds. Alana, armed with a crumpled map and an adventurous spirit, found herself deliberately lost within this labyrinth. The usual anxieties of disorientation were replaced by a thrill of discovery, a delicious sense of surrender to the city's embrace. Each turn down a winding alleyway revealed a new vista, a fresh assault on her senses. A vendor expertly arranged pyramids of sticky dates glistening under the sun. Another displayed an array of handcrafted leather poufs, dyed in shades of paprika and indigo. Children, their laughter like bright bells, darted through the throng, their movements a blur against the richer, slower pace of the adults. She felt a delicious anonymity, a freedom from the expectations and routines of her everyday life. This was precisely the escape she had craved, a potent antidote to the mundane. The sensory overload was not overwhelming. It was intoxicating, a potent elixir that pulled her deeper into the ancient, captivating charm of Marrakech. It was a living, breathing organism, and she was eager to be absorbed into its very essence, to let its rhythm become her own. The sheer density of life, the unvarnished humanity on display, was a stark and beautiful contrast to the curated, often sterile, order she had left behind. She paused before a stall laden with intricate Berber carpets, their geometric patterns telling stories as old as time. The sheer artistry, the dedication poured into each knot and thread was captivating. The vendor, a man with weathered hands and eyes that held a quiet wisdom, offered her a shy smile and a gesture towards the vibrant displays. Alana ran her hand over the thick wool, the texture, a testament to generations of craftsmanship. It felt warm, imbued with the very essence of the land. She imagined it gracing her modest London flat, a vibrant splash of the exotic amidst the familiar, a constant reminder of this transformative journey. Further on, the air grew thick with the sweet, heady aroma of orange blossoms and rosewater, signaling the presence of perfumers and cosmetic vendors. Glass vials of argan oil, precious and golden, were lined up with meticulous care. Women, their faces framed by colorful headscarves, examined fragrant soaps and shimmering lotions, their murmurs a soft counterpoint to the general din. Alana found herself drawn to a small stall where an elderly woman, her face a roadmap of a life well lived, carefully mixed fragrant oils in small clay bowls. The woman looked up, her gaze kind, and offered Alana a tiny glass vial, its contents a pale, shimmering liquid. "For your skin," she said, her voice a gentle rasp. "From the Atlas Mountains, it holds the secrets of the sun." Ilana dabbed a tiny amount onto her wrist. The scent was delicate, floral, with an underlying warmth that spoke of earth and sunshine. It was unlike any fragrance she had ever encountered, a subtle yet potent evocation of the land itself. She purchased a small bottle, the exchange marked by a silent understanding, a shared appreciation for the simple beauty of nature's bounty. As she navigated the increasingly narrow passageways, the sunlight began to filter through in thinner shafts, signaling the approach of late afternoon. The crowds, if anything, seemed to grow denser, the energy more palpable. She passed a stall piled high with polished tagines, their conical lids promising culinary delights. Beside it, a man meticulously arranged an array of silver teapots, their polished surfaces reflecting the vibrant scene around them. The sheer abundance of it all was staggering, a testament to human creativity, to the enduring spirit of trade and craft that had thrived in this city for centuries. She noticed how the locals navigated the throng with unpracticed ease, a graceful sidestepping that Alana, with her slightly hesitant steps, could only admire. They seemed to blend seamlessly into the fabric of the souk, their interactions fluid and familiar. She, on the other hand, was an observer, a visitor, her every movement marked by a conscious awareness of her surroundings, a delightful outsider looking in. This sense of being both present and apart was an integral part of the intoxicating experience. The sheer diversity of goods on display was a constant source of wonder. There were intricately carved wooden boxes, their surfaces inlaid with mother of pearl. There were delicate, silver filigree jewelry, their designs as complex and mesmerizing as a spider's web. There were vibrant, painted ceramics, their glazes reflecting the myriad colors of the Moroccan landscape. And everywhere, there were the textiles, the soft wools, the rich silks, the rougher weaves of hand-loomed cottons, all dyed in an astonishing spectrum of colors. It was a feast for the eyes, a testament to the deep wellspring of artistic expression that flowed through this ancient city. She found herself momentarily mesmerized by a display of vibrant jelabas, their flowing lines and embroidered details speaking of comfort and tradition. The vendor, a young man with a warm, open face, gestured towards a particularly beautiful blue one, its embroidery in contrasting gold thread. "For you, madam?" he asked, his English accented but clear. "It will catch the light like the Moroccan sky." Ilana smiled, her heart swelling with the sheer joy of being immersed in such a rich, vibrant tapestry of life. She wasn't sure she would buy anything, but the interaction itself was a gift. It was the connection, however brief, that made the experience so profound. She was no longer just a tourist observing from a distance. She was participating, however tentatively, in the vibrant hum of this extraordinary place. The labyrinthine nature of the souk was disorienting, yes, but it was also a source of endless fascination. Each alley seemed to lead to another. Each corner turned revealed a new wonder. The sounds, too, blended and shifted, the insistent call of street vendors, the murmur of conversations in Arabic and French, the distant strains of music played on traditional instruments, the occasional bray of a donkey laden with goods. It was a symphony of human activity, a testament to the enduring vibrancy of life in this ancient city. She came across a small, hidden square, a brief respite from the crowded thoroughfares. Here, a few men sat on low stools, sipping mint tea from small glasses, their faces etched with the stories of their lives. The air here was cooler, shaded by ancient walls and the overhanging branches of a single, gnarled olive tree. It was a moment of quiet observation, a chance to absorb the atmosphere without the press of the crowd. She felt a profound sense of peace settle over her, a feeling of being truly present in the moment, disconnected from the pressures of her former life. The sheer artistry on display was breathtaking. From the intricate zellige tilework adorning hidden doorways to the hand-painted ceramics gleaming in the sun, every surface seemed to hold a story, a testament to the enduring craftsmanship that was woven into the very fabric of Marrakech. She paused to admire a craftsman meticulously carving a wooden door, his hands moving with a practiced grace that spoke of years of dedication. The wood, fragrant and rich, was being transformed into an object of exquisite beauty, a piece of art that would stand for generations. As she continued her wanderings, the calls of the muezzins began to echo from minarets, their haunting melodies weaving through the city's hum. It was a reminder of the deeper spiritual pulse of Marrakech, a sound that seemed to resonate with the very soul of the place. It added another layer to the sensory tapestry, a spiritual dimension to the bustling commerce. She found herself drawn to a stall selling traditional Moroccan slippers, babouches, in a rainbow of colors. Soft leather, exquisitely embroidered, they promised comfort and a touch of exotic flair. She picked up a pair of vibrant yellow ones, the color as bright and cheerful as a sunbeam. The vendor, a man with a twinkle in his eye, encouraged her to try them on. Slipping them on, she felt an immediate connection to the ease and comfort they offered, a subtle yet potent link to the culture she was so happily exploring. The sheer volume of sensory input was exhilarating. It was a constant stream of new sights, sounds, and smells, each one vying for her attention, each one adding to the intoxicating richness of the experience. She was a sponge, absorbing it all, allowing the vibrant energy of Marrakech to seep into her very being. She felt a sense of awakening, a stirring of something long dormant within her, a response to the sheer, unadulterated vitality of this ancient city. The maze of alleys, which could have been intimidating, felt instead like a welcome embrace, a promise of discovery around every bend. It was a world that demanded to be explored, to be felt, to be breathed in, and Alana was ready to answer its call. The thrill of being lost was the thrill of being found, of discovering parts of herself that had been hidden away, buried beneath the routines and expectations of her ordinary life. Marrakech was not just a destination, it was a revelation. The narrow arteries of the souk, once a dizzying labyrinth, now seemed to draw Alana forward with an unseen magnetic force. The kaleidoscope of colors, the symphony of sounds, the intoxicating perfumes, they all faded into a muted backdrop, for her attention had been ensnared by a single, arresting presence. He stood near a stall laden with the soft gleam of polished brass, a stark, arresting silhouette against the riotous vibrancy of the Jama el-Fna's extended embrace. He was, quite simply, extraordinary. Not in a flamboyant, attention-seeking way, but with an inherent, almost ancient gravity that drew the eye and held it captive. His build was lean, yet there was a subtle power in his stance, a natural authority that seemed to emanate from him, unaffected by the milling crowds. His attire was simple, a dark, flowing garment that spoke of local tradition, yet it clung to him with a certain elegance, hinting at the sculpted lines of his frame beneath. But it was his face that truly stole Alana's breath. Finely sculpted, with high cheekbones and a strong, defined jawline, his features possessed a timeless quality, hinting at a heritage steeped in the sands and sun of this ancient land. His skin was bronzed, kissed by the relentless Moroccan sun, and a subtle, almost imperceptible smile played on his lips, as if he held a private amusement at the chaotic ballet unfolding around him. It wasn't a boisterous smile, but one that flickered at the edges of his eyes, a silent acknowledgement of the world's vibrant, often absurd, theater. And then there were his eyes. Even from a distance, Alana felt their magnetic pull. They were dark, impossibly so, like pools reflecting the deepest, star-strewn expanse of the desert night sky. They held a depth that seemed to contain centuries of stories, of knowledge, of a profound understanding of the world. There was a stillness in his gaze, a quiet intensity that seemed to pierce through the superficial layers of the souk, seeing something far more profound. It was a gaze that didn't demand, but invited, drawing her in with an unspoken curiosity. Alana's heart, which had been beating in a steady rhythm of exploration and delight, now stumbled, finding a new, more urgent cadence. It wasn't merely physical attraction, though he was undeniably handsome. This was something deeper, a recognition, a resonance that vibrated through her very core. It was as if her soul had reached out and found its echo in this stranger's presence. An immediate, undeniable fascination had taken root, pulling her towards him with an invisible thread, a force as primal and compelling as gravity itself. She felt a curious disorientation, a delightful vertigo, as if the very ground beneath her feet had shifted, and the only point of certainty was the compelling magnetism of his gaze. He seemed oblivious to her scrutiny, his attention seemingly fixed on the intricate patterns of a hand-hammered tray displayed by the vendor. Yet, Alana felt an undeniable connection, a silent acknowledgement passing between them, though she knew it was likely one-sided. His stillness in the midst of the swirling chaos was like an anchor, a point of calm in a sea of overwhelming stimuli. He was a study in contrasts, present yet apart, serene yet possessing an undeniable power. She found herself subtly shifting her position, moving from the shadowed alcove of a carpet stall to a more open pathway, angling herself so she could observe him without appearing overtly intrusive. The scent of spices and leather, which had moments before been intoxicating, now seemed to recede, replaced by an imagined fragrance that seemed to belong solely to him, perhaps of sandalwood and the dry, clean air of the Sahara. He turned his head then, almost as if sensing her gaze, his eyes sweeping across the bustling square. For a fleeting moment, his gaze met hers. It was a fraction of a second, barely a breath, but in that instant the world narrowed to just the two of them. His dark eyes, those wells of the desert night, seemed to linger on her, a flicker of something unreadable, curiosity, recognition, passing through their depths before they moved on, sweeping across the crowd with an effortless grace. That brief exchange, so ephemeral, sent a tremor through Alana. It was a spark, igniting a wildfire of emotion and curiosity within her. Who was this man? What was the story held within those enigmatic eyes? The anonymity she had cherished moments before now felt like a frustrating barrier. She wanted to know him, to understand the source of that quiet command, the reason for that knowing smile. She lingered, her steps slowing, her gaze drawn back to him again and again, like a compass needle, finding its true north. She watched as a group of local men approached him, their greetings respectful, their voices low and deferential. He responded with a quiet nod, a brief, murmured reply that Alana couldn't decipher, but the interaction further solidified the impression of an individual of consequence, someone who navigated this vibrant world with an intrinsic understanding of its unspoken rules. The sunlight, now beginning its descent, cast longer shadows, painting the souk in warmer, richer hues. The air seemed to grow heavier, more charged with anticipation as the day began to transition into evening. And still, Alana found herself rooted, her senses now acutely attuned to the man who had so effortlessly captured her attention. He was an enigma, a mystery wrapped in the exotic allure of Marrakech, and Alana felt a pull, a nascent desire to unravel the secrets he so silently guarded. The vibrant chaos of the souk had, in a single, breathtaking moment, become the backdrop to a personal drama, a clandestine encounter where two souls, for a fleeting instant, had met across the currents of a crowded marketplace. The desert night, it seemed, had found its eyes, and they were looking out at her. The eddying currents of the Jama el-Fna, a human river flowing with 1,000 individual streams, parted for him as if by some invisible decree. Ilana watched, a silent observer in the grand theater, as the man she had noticed, the one whose presence resonated with a quiet authority, moved with an unhurried grace through the throng. He was a point of stillness in the swirling vortex of Marrakech's heart, an oasis of composure in a desert of animated chaos. His dark garment seemed to absorb the fading sunlight, yet it was not a somberness that clung to him, but a profound sense of self-possession. Then, as if the universe had conspired to orchestrate their encounter, his head turned. It wasn't a casual glance, not a mere sweep of the eye across the panorama of sights and sounds that defined this legendary square. It was a deliberate shift, a focusing, as if he had felt the silent intensity of her gaze across the distance, a tether spun from pure, unadulterated curiosity. His eyes, those deep pools that had so captivated her, found hers. The world seemed to halt. The cacophony of snake charmer flutes, the rhythmic beat of Berber drums, the impassioned cries of storytellers, all of it dissolved into a hushed silence. It was as if a veil had been drawn, isolating them in a bubble of shared awareness within the bustling expanse of the square. His gaze was not demanding, nor was it overtly inviting. It was, rather, an acknowledgement, a recognition, perhaps, that went beyond the superficiality of a chance encounter. It was a held breath, a suspended moment in time, a silent conversation conducted in the language of the eyes. In that fleeting, yet impossibly long instant, Alana felt a jolt, an electric current that arced across the crowded space between them. It was a spark, raw and untamed, igniting a flicker of something deeply resonant within her. His eyes, so dark and fathomless, held a depth that spoke volumes without a single utterance. There was a question there, a gentle curiosity that mirrored her own burgeoning fascination. But there was also something more, something that hinted at a shared understanding, a mutual acknowledgement of an extraordinary moment unfolding. He didn't move towards her. He made no gesture, offered no overt sign of recognition beyond the profound intensity of his gaze. Yet, his stillness was more potent than any approach. It was an unspoken invitation, a challenge woven with a subtle promise. It was the quiet allure of the unknown, a siren's call whispered on the desert wind. The distance between them remained a palpable void, but it was a void charged with an electric potential, a space pregnant with the possibility of what might be. A flutter of apprehension danced in Alana's chest, a primal instinct that whispered caution in her ear. She was a traveler, a guest in this land, and he was an enigma, a native whose world she was only beginning to glimpse. Yet this apprehension was quickly eclipsed by an exhilarating sense of destiny, a powerful feeling that this was no mere accident, but a moment orchestrated by forces far grander than herself. The usual pragmatism that guided her travels, the careful consideration of every step, was momentarily suspended, held captive by the sheer, unadulterated force of his regard. The intensity of his stare was almost palpable, a physical sensation that seemed to wrap around her. It was a gaze that saw not just her outward appearance, but something deeper, something that resonated with the very core of her being. There was a potent sense of something extraordinary about to unfold, a feeling that the tapestry of her journey had just been rewoven with a new, captivating thread. This wasn't just attraction, it was a magnetic pull, a gravitational force that defied logic and convention. She held his gaze for a moment longer, allowing the silent dialogue to continue. She searched his eyes for clues, for an indication of his thoughts, his intentions. Was he merely observing the unfolding drama of the square, his attention momentarily snagged by a fellow observer? Or was there a deeper connection, a shared recognition of something significant in this unexpected intersection of their paths? The mystery surrounding him deepened, only serving to amplify her fascination. He offered a faint, almost imperceptible smile as he finally broke the gaze, his eyes sweeping back across the vibrant scene. It was a fleeting expression, a mere hint at the corners of his lips, yet it sent another ripple of warmth through Alana. It was a knowing smile, as if he understood the silent language they had just shared, a subtle acknowledgement of the electric current that had passed between them. It was a promise of more, a suggestion that this brief, silent exchange was merely the prologue to a larger narrative. The moment had passed, the spell momentarily broken, but the impact lingered. Alana found herself subtly adjusting her position, her attention now firmly anchored to the man who had so effortlessly captivated her. She was no longer merely a tourist observing the spectacle of Marrakech. She was a participant in a nascent drama, a silent observer who had received an unspoken invitation. The usual caution she exercised when navigating foreign lands, the measured approach to new encounters, had been momentarily abandoned, replaced by an overwhelming urge to explore this compelling mystery. The sunlight, now slanting lower, cast long, distorted shadows across the square, imbuing the already vibrant scene with an even richer, more ethereal glow. The air, thick with the scent of spices, grilled meats, and the faint perfume of orange blossoms, seemed to shimmer with an unspoken energy. And amidst this sensory feast, Alana's focus remained unwavering. He was a solitary figure, yet he commanded attention, his presence a silent testament to an inner strength and a captivating allure that transcended the immediate surroundings. She watched as he exchanged a brief word with a passing vendor, his voice a low murmur that was lost in the general din. The interaction was brief, a mere nod of acknowledgement, yet it further solidified the impression of a man deeply rooted in this place, familiar with its rhythms and its people. He was a part of the fabric of Marrakech, yet he seemed to stand slightly apart, an observer with a profound understanding of the world around him. The magnetism of his gaze, though no longer directly upon her, still lingered, an invisible thread pulling at her senses. She felt a strange mixture of exhilaration and trepidation. This encounter, however fleeting, had shifted something within her. It was a departure from the planned trajectory of her journey, an unexpected detour onto a path that felt both exhilarating and a little daunting. The anonymity that had initially been her comfort now felt like a barrier, a veil that obscured the intriguing presence before her. She resisted the urge to follow, to close the distance that had been so artfully maintained. His silence was an invitation, yes, but it was also a test. It was a subtle challenge to her own boldness, a silent question of whether she would dare to step beyond the boundaries of polite observation. The air crackled with unspoken possibilities, with the tantalizing prospect of a connection that transcended the ordinary. Alana's heart beat a steady, insistent rhythm against her ribs, a testament to the powerful undercurrent of emotion that surged within her. She was caught in the gravitational pull of this encounter, a fascination that had taken root with astonishing speed. The man in the Jama el-Fna was more than just a handsome face. He was a riddle, an enigma whose silent presence had spoken volumes. And in the heart of this vibrant Moroccan city, under the watchful gaze of the setting sun, Alana felt the stirrings of something profound, a sense that the adventure she had embarked upon had just taken a captivating and potentially life-altering turn. The unspoken invitation hung in the air, a tantalizing whisper of what might be, and Alana, for the first time in a long time, felt the irresistible urge to explore the uncharted territory of the unknown. The souk, with all its dazzling distractions, had narrowed to the singular, compelling focus of a man whose eyes had promised a story, and Alana was ready to listen. The vibrant chaos of the Jama el-Fna had been a symphony of sensory overload, a magnificent prelude that had culminated in a silent, arresting exchange of glances. Now, Alana found herself drawn away from the heart of the square, not by design, but by an invisible tether that seemed to pull her into the labyrinthine arteries of the Medina. She hadn't intended to lose her bearings, yet as the throng of the main square began to thin, funneling her into narrower passages, a peculiar calm settled upon her. The initial disorientation, the familiar prickle of anxiety that usually accompanied being misplaced in an unfamiliar urban landscape, was absent. Instead, a sense of profound serendipity, almost an exhilaration, bloomed in its place. The alleyways, scarcely wider than her outstretched arms, twisted and turned with a disarming irregularity. Sunlight, which had so boldly asserted itself in the open square, now dappled through woven reed coverings overhead, casting intricate patterns of light and shadow on the ancient ochre-stained walls. The air, still thick with the mingled scents of cumin, mint, and something faintly floral, seemed to hold its breath, waiting. Each turn presented a new vista, a cascade of colors, bolts of crimson and saffron silk draped from doorways, pyramids of jewel-toned slippers, gleaming brass lanterns reflecting the filtered light. The murmur of distant conversations, the rhythmic tap-tap-tap of a coppersmith's hammer, the occasional bleating of a goat tied to a post, these were not sounds of distress, but rather the intimate whispers of a city breathing. Ilana's initial intention had been to find her way back to the Riad, a sanctuary of quiet elegance she had booked for her stay. But as she navigated the bewildering network of passages, a subtle recalibration occurred within her. The meticulously planned itinerary, the carefully marked map tucked away in her bag, began to feel irrelevant. The man whose gaze had held her captive for that suspended moment in the Jama el-Fna had, unknowingly, charted a new course for her. His presence had ignited a spark, a curiosity that transcended the simple desire for comfortable lodgings. She felt a pull, a directional imperative that had nothing to do with logic and everything to do with an unarticulated yearning. She found herself deliberately taking a wrong turn, a conscious deviation from the instinct to find a recognizable landmark. It was a small act of rebellion against her own ingrained need for order, fueled by the tantalizing possibility that this disorientation was, in fact, a guided journey. The Medina was not a maze to be escaped, but a tapestry to be explored, thread by intricate thread. Each alley seemed to whisper a story, each arched doorway a potential threshold to something new. The sheer press of humanity, the constant flow of people, women in flowing djellabas, men with weathered faces and knowing eyes, children darting through the throng like quicksilver, was not oppressive, but vital. They were the lifeblood of this ancient place, and she, a temporary observer, was being absorbed into their current. The sheer density of visual information was almost overwhelming. Stalls overflowed with handcrafted leather goods, their rich, earthy scent mingling with the sweet perfume of dates and figs. Merchants called out their wares, their voices a melodic blend of Arabic and French, their smiles open and inviting. Here, a craftsman meticulously etched intricate patterns onto silver bracelets. There, a woman patiently wove a carpet, her fingers a blur of motion, creating a masterpiece from a chaotic skein of wool. Ilana paused before a stall piled high with vibrant tagine pots, their conical lids promising culinary adventures. She ran her fingers over the smooth, glazed surfaces, imagining the fragrant stews that would bubble within them. Her senses were on high alert, absorbing every detail. The way the light caught the iridescent scales of dried fish displayed on a nearby cart, the pungent aroma of olives and preserved lemons from a corner grocer, the distant strains of an oud player weaving a mournful melody. It was a world away from the sterile order of her everyday life, a riot of authentic experience that was both intoxicating and deeply grounding. She felt a sense of exhilaration, a raw, unadulterated joy in simply being present, in allowing the Medina to wash over her. She deliberately took a narrower path, one that seemed to lead away from the main thoroughfares. Here, the sounds softened, the crowds thinned, and the architecture grew more intimate. Small courtyards, hidden behind heavy wooden doors, offered glimpses of trickling fountains and verdant bougainvillea. She saw a potter, his hands coated in clay, coaxing a graceful form from a spinning wheel, his concentration absolute. She watched, mesmerized, as he smoothed the lip of the pot, his movements fluid and practiced. He looked up for a fleeting moment, his eyes meeting hers, and offered a small, almost imperceptible nod of acknowledgement before returning to his work. It was another silent exchange, another connection forged in the unspoken language of shared human endeavor. The feeling of being lost was no longer a cause for concern. It was an invitation. It was an invitation to surrender to the flow, to trust that the winding paths were leading her not astray, but towards something she didn't yet know she was seeking. The man from the Jama el-Fna remained a vivid imprint in her mind, his dark gaze a silent promise of unspoken depths. She wondered if he, too, navigated these labyrinthine streets with such a sense of purpose, such an innate understanding of their secrets. Was he a cartographer of these hidden ways, his internal compass attuned to the Medina's ancient rhythms? She paused at a small, unmarked archway, half hidden by a cascading cascade of jasmine. The scent was intoxicating, a heady perfume that seemed to beckon her forward. Beyond the arch, a narrow staircase descended into a dimly lit passage. Hesitation flickered, a brief whisper of caution. This felt more secluded, more private, a true departure from the public thoroughfares, but the pull was too strong to resist. It was as if an invisible thread, spun from that intense moment in the square, was now guiding her steps, leading her deeper into the heart of Marrakech. The air in the passage was cooler, tinged with the dampness of ancient stone. The only light came from small, recessed lamps embedded in the walls, casting long, dancing shadows. The sounds of the city faded, replaced by a hushed stillness that amplified the soft scuff of her own footsteps. She felt a thrill, a delicious sense of venturing into the unknown, a feeling that she was on the cusp of a discovery. This was not merely sightseeing, this was an immersion, a full surrender to the sensory and emotional experience of this captivating city. She emerged into a small, hidden courtyard, a miniature oasis of calm. In the center, a single gnarled olive tree stood sentinel, its silver-green leaves shimmering in the muted light. Around the courtyard, several doorways led into what appeared to be artisan workshops. She could hear the faint ringing of a hammer, the gentle murmur of conversation. It was a pocket of quiet industry, a secluded world within the bustling Medina. As she stood there, taking in the serene atmosphere, a figure emerged from one of the workshops. He was a craftsman, his hands stained with a vibrant blue pigment, a focused intensity in his eyes. He was meticulously painting intricate patterns onto a ceramic tile, his movements precise and unhurried. He looked up as Alana entered the courtyard, his gaze meeting hers with a quiet curiosity, but no surprise. It was as if he had been expecting her, or perhaps in this hidden corner of the Medina, visitors were a rare but not unwelcome occurrence. He gestured with his chin towards a small, low stool placed near his workbench. "Assalamu alaikum," he said, his voice soft and melodic, a welcome into his space. "Wa alaikum assalam," Alana replied, a genuine smile gracing her lips. She moved towards the stool, a sense of profound calm settling over her. She felt no urge to explain her presence, no need to apologize for her intrusion. The Medina, in its infinite wisdom, had guided her here, and in this small, sun-dappled courtyard, surrounded by the quiet dedication of a craftsman, she felt a sense of belonging, a peaceful acceptance of her unexpected journey. The path ahead remained unwritten, but for the first time since arriving in Marrakech, Alana felt truly found, not in the sense of having located her riad, but in having discovered a quiet corner of herself that resonated with the ancient soul of the city. The man from the square, the silent catalyst for this detour, remained a potent thought, a reminder that sometimes the most profound discoveries begin when we allow ourselves to be lost. This hidden courtyard, with its single olive tree and the patient artisan, felt like a significant waypoint, a testament to the serendipitous unfolding of her adventure. The winding alleys had not led her astray. They had, in fact, led her precisely where she needed to be, to a moment of quiet contemplation and unexpected connection, a prelude to whatever lay further down the unseen paths of the Medina. The air itself seemed to hum with possibility, a gentle promise whispered on the warm Moroccan breeze that even in being lost, one could find something infinitely more precious. The lingering warmth of the Jama el-Fna seemed to cling to Alana's skin, a phantom sensation of the sun's intense embrace. Yet it was not the heat that had imprinted itself upon her, but the memory of a gaze. A single, prolonged moment had shattered the predictable arc of her day, weaving a silken thread of intrigue into the tapestry of her solitary exploration. The man, Zayn, had become a question mark etched onto her consciousness, a riddle posed in the heart of the bustling square. His eyes, dark and fathomless as the desert night, had held a depth that hinted at untold stories, a world unrevealed. As she navigated the increasingly intimate arteries of the Medina, the sensory deluge of the market began to recede, replaced by a quiet introspection, a landscape shaped by the contours of that unforgettable encounter. The winding alleyways, each turn a deliberate exploration rather than a navigational error, became a physical manifestation of the curiosity that had taken root within her. She found herself replaying the brief exchange, dissecting the subtle nuances of his expression, the almost imperceptible tilt of his head. What lay behind that reserved demeanor? What passions simmered beneath the surface of that calm exterior? He had seemed both rooted in the ancient soil of Marrakech and possessed of an otherworldly grace, an enigma that resonated with a part of her she hadn't known existed. Was he a merchant, a scholar, a nomad of these intricate streets? The possibilities swirled in her mind, each one adding another layer to the captivating puzzle he presented. She paused before a stall laden with intricately carved wooden boxes, the scent of cedar wood a comforting counterpoint to the sweeter perfumes of the souk. Her fingers traced the delicate patterns etched into the lid of one, imagining the hands that had shaped it, the patience required for such artistry. But even as her attention focused on the tangible beauty before her, her thoughts drifted back to Zayn. She wondered if he was a patron of such crafts, if he appreciated the dedication of these artisans. Did he possess a similar quiet intensity, a hidden passion for the creation of beauty? The memory of his gaze felt like a shared secret, a silent acknowledgement of something unspoken that had passed between them. The concept of lost had transformed from a source of mild anxiety into an exhilarating freedom. Each unmarked doorway, each shadowed passage, held the potential for discovery, not merely of hidden courtyards or unique wares, but of insights into herself, catalyzed by the enigmatic presence of Zayn. He had, in a way, gifted her this detour, this permission to wander, to embrace the serendipity of the moment. Her planned itinerary, meticulously crafted to ensure maximum efficiency and sightseeing, now felt like a distant, almost irrelevant artifact from a former life. The true adventure, she realized, was not about checking off landmarks, but about allowing the unexpected to unfold, about following the invisible threads that connected moments and people. She found herself lingering in the periphery of a small gathering where a storyteller, his voice a resonant baritone, captivated an audience with tales of ancient jinn and desert caravans. The listeners, perched on low stools and leaning against weathered walls, were lost in his narrative, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of lanterns. Alana watched them, a silent observer, and in their rapt attention she saw a reflection of her own captivated state. She imagined Zayn in such a setting, perhaps sharing his own tales, his voice weaving spells of its own. Did he have a hidden talent for storytelling, a deep well of experiences from which to draw? The thought sent a shiver of anticipation through her, a longing to witness another facet of his character. The vibrant colors of the Medina, the riot of reds, blues, and yellows, now seemed to possess a deeper significance. They were not just pigments on fabric or ceramic. They were hues that painted the backdrop of her burgeoning fascination with Zayn. The saffron of a woman's jellaba reminded her of the warm tones in his skin. The deep indigo of a dyed leather bag echoed the darkness of his eyes. Every sensory input, every fleeting observation became imbued with his presence, a subtle reminder that he was now an integral part of her Marrakech experience, even in his absence. She ventured down a particularly narrow passage, the walls closing in, the sounds of the main thoroughfares fading into a hushed murmur. Here, the air was cooler, carrying the faint, earthy scent of damp stone and something floral, perhaps from a hidden garden. Sunlight struggled to penetrate the dense weave of reed mats overhead, casting an ethereal, dappled light that softened the harsh edges of the ancient buildings. It was in this pocket of quiet solitude that the intensity of her thoughts about Zane became even more pronounced. She stopped before a small, unassuming doorway, its wooden surface weathered and bearing the marks of time. Above it, a single, intricately carved wooden owl perched, its eyes seeming to watch her with a knowing gaze. It felt like a secret gateway, a portal to something hidden. A flicker of hesitation danced at the edge of her resolve. This was a more deliberate step into the unknown, a departure from the relative openness of the earlier passages. Yet, the memory of Zane's eyes, that silent invitation to explore, propelled her forward. It was as if his gaze had left an invisible imprint on her senses, a magnetic pull guiding her through this labyrinth. Pushing the heavy door open slightly, she peered into the dim interior. The air within was thick with a scent of spices and something richer, more intoxicating, perhaps aged wood and beeswax. A single oil lamp cast a warm, inviting glow, illuminating shelves lined with leather-bound books and small, stoppered vials filled with amber and crimson liquids. A workbench, cluttered with tools and delicate instruments, suggested a craftsman at work, perhaps an apothecary or a scribe. And then she saw him, not Zane, but a craftsman, his brow furrowed in concentration, his hands delicately applying a fine gold leaf to the spine of an ancient tome. He looked up, his eyes crinkling at the corners as he met her gaze. There was no surprise in his expression, only a mild curiosity, a welcoming calm. He gestured with a slight inclination of his head towards a low, cushioned stool near his workspace. "Ahlan wa sahlan," he murmured, his voice a gentle ripple in the quiet space. Alana returned the greeting, a soft ahlan bik, and stepped fully into the workshop, allowing the door to swing shut behind her, muffling the sounds of the Medina. She felt no intrusion, no need for explanation. This felt like a natural progression, a step deeper into the unfolding narrative of her day, a narrative that had been irrevocably altered by the encounter in the Jama' el-Fna. The craftsman returned to his work, his focus unwavering, while Alana settled onto the stool, her gaze sweeping over the treasures of the workshop. The books themselves seemed to hum with ancient knowledge, their pages filled with scripts she couldn't decipher, their bindings hinting at centuries of stories. The vials on the shelves contained substances she could only guess at, potent elixirs, fragrant oils, perhaps even rare pigments. She wondered if Zane was a collector of such things, if his world was filled with these quiet sanctuaries of knowledge and craft. The enigma of him was not a source of anxiety, but a delicious invitation, a promise of layers yet to be peeled back. She picked up a small, intricately carved wooden bird from the workbench, its wings spread as if caught in mid-flight. The detail was exquisite, each feather rendered with painstaking care. As her fingers brushed against the smooth, polished wood, she felt a connection to the artisan, to the quiet dedication that had brought this small creature to life. It was a tangible reminder that behind every object, every experience, there was a human touch, a story waiting to be discovered. Her thoughts, however, inevitably circled back to Zane. What was his story? What were his passions? The mystery of him was not an obstacle, but a potent allure, a siren's call drawing her deeper into the heart of Marrakech. His brief presence had been a catalyst, igniting a curiosity that far surpassed the casual interest of a tourist. It was a deeper, more resonant pull, a recognition of something profound and perhaps, she dared to hope, reciprocal. She imagined him walking through these same narrow passages, his presence perhaps as unassuming as the quiet craftsman before her, yet radiating an undeniable magnetism. Was he aware of the subtle ripples he created, the unspoken questions he left in his wake? The sun, now lower in the sky, began to cast longer shadows, deepening the sense of enchantment that permeated the Medina. And with each passing moment, the memory of Zane's gaze, that silent, potent spark, continued to burn brightly, illuminating the path of her unfolding adventure, hinting at a connection that was only just beginning to whisper its secrets. The Medina, with its hidden courtyards and silent artisans, had become more than just a labyrinth of streets. It was a canvas upon which the first delicate strokes of a compelling narrative were being painted, a narrative intricately woven with the captivating mystery of a man named Zane. The encounter, though fleeting, had irrevocably altered the landscape of her journey, transforming a solitary exploration into a quest, an unspoken yearning to understand the depth and complexity of the enigma that had so unexpectedly captured her attention. She felt a growing anticipation, a subtle hum of excitement beneath the surface of her calm demeanor, as if the Medina itself was conspiring to reveal more of its secrets and perhaps more of his. The memory of his eyes was no longer just a fleeting impression. It was a guiding star, leading her through the intricate pathways of both the ancient city and her own burgeoning emotions. And that's where this chapter comes to rest. Thank you for listening. This was Chapter 1 from the Mirage of Love. If you'd like to explore more of my work or purchase any of my books, you can find the links below.